Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, whatever time it is and wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in to the Kindaris Pictures podcast. My name is Adrienne Warren. I am your host and founder of Kindaris Pictures. Now, before we get into this episode, I do want to make a couple of announcements. So, episodes of the Kindaris Pictures podcast will go live. That means it'll be uploaded onto Anchor twice a month. So audio will be posted on the second and fourth Sunday of every month. And starting 2 weeks from now, 2 Sundays from now, or 2 Fridays, video will be posted on YouTube the following Friday. So when I post the audio on Anchor on Sunday, a video recording will be posted on Friday. Just wanted to, spice things up a little bit. I don't know. And so let's just visit kindarispictures.com for more information about that. So the video recordings will actually start 2 weeks from now. And as for the second announcement, I am working to get this podcast on different platforms. So right now, again, it is on Anchor, and I am waiting for approval from Apple Podcasts, So that's all I have for you guys right now. Let's jump into this episode. In today's episode of Kindaris Pictures podcast, I want to pay tribute to the cast of the 1929 film, Hallelujah. So in this episode, I will be speaking their names. I will express reverence for the foundations that they built for Black actors in Hollywood. So this is a foundation that's kind of consisting of hope, determination. I will literally speak their names near the end of this podcast. So this isn't a movie review. I will touch on a bit of history, but this is more so putting a spotlight on the forgotten names and faces of these trailblazers. So previously, Hallelujah has often been mistakenly referenced as the first Hollywood production to feature an all-black cast, but that distinction actually goes to Hearts and Dixie. I think a lot of people are more understanding of that now. So that Hearts and Dixie was actually released a few months before Hallelujah. So both films were significant, and not just significant to the Black Hollywood experience, but they were a part of that group of film cinema that kind of blazed trails for sound films, or what were known as talkies then. So that string of movies that came out after The Jazz Singer that were kind of experimentations with sound, Hallelujah and Hearts and Dixie were a part of that. So they're not only trailblazers for Black Hollywood film, Black Hollywood experience, but also for sound film. So both of these movies intended to do something marvelous, amazing, life-changing for African Americans and the portrayal of them on screen. And there was no more blackface, and we're also going to talk about the Black experience, the authentic Black experience, especially in the South. But for the most part, if you've seen either of these movies, they still kind of stuck to stereotypes and also one-dimensional portrayals of African Americans. So again, I am not going to review Hallelujah, and I'm also not going to speak too much on MGM or the production. I'm not going to focus too much on the negative, even though it is important for me to talk about certain things that took place in the background in order for you guys and for me and for all of us to have a greater appreciation of the actors and what they were able to do as trailblazers, as people who were all relatively new to the screen. I will be discussing, things that happened on set briefly and before the movie even went into production. So the director, I never know if I say his name right. King Vidor, famed director, producer, writer, made a lot of great Hollywood movies. So he was super excited about this movie. He was from the South, from Texas, I believe. And he wanted to make this movie about, Black life in the South. And then, back then and still even now, when you think of Black people and Black Southerners, people think of music sometimes. We all know how to sing, but anyway. So he wanted to make this movie about Black people. They're going to be singing, and what greater opportunity to show the promise of sound film than with Black people singing. They were all going to be like happy-go-lucky, cotton picking, all that stuff that Black people are synonymous with. And So again, this movie was released in 1929. So we are talking pre-code era. So if pre-code was kind of just starting to get its footing, if a bunch of pre-code movies weren't released in 1929, 1928, they were in production. So when King Vidor presented this idea, a lot of people turned it down, of course. But the person who turned it down, or one of the people who really stood out to me, I actually wrote about this in my thesis I did for grad school. Nicholas, I can never say his name correctly. It's Skank. It's hard to say because it's not Skank, but it's SCHENCK. So film lovers, old Hollywood lovers, you know that's the president of Lowe's. You guys know who I'm talking about. So he presented it to Nicholas Skank, and again, he was one of the people who rejected it, who was very much against it. But I brought up the fact that this was a pre-code movie, and I brought up the fact that I'm sure if pre-code movies weren't released or being released around this time, they were in production, and people were quite familiar with the content and the themes of pre-code movies, or most of them anyway. So I don't know what was said. I don't know what Mr. Skank said about all the movies that were released around that time, what MGM thought of them, because MGM was like the company that wanted to promote family-friendly movies, especially as we get into like the 30s and the 40s. But I find it ironic what Nicholas Skank had to say about Hallelujah. So when King Vidor kept, kind of badgering him about making this movie, his response was, when he finally said yes, his response was, okay, I'll let you make your movie about whores. And so, of course, if you go to kindarispictures.com and check out the link for the blog, you'll see sources and information as to where you can read that and learn about that. But I can't help but think, of all the movies, the pre-code movies, all the movies that came out around that time, how is it that this particular movie would be the one about whores? Of course, we already know why it got so much pushback. But it's just like, okay, if you've watched Hallelujah, you'll see, first of all, the quote-unquote whorishness of it. I mean, it's only like one character that's supposed to be like that, and it's, again, I'm not going to get into the movie or get into reviews of it, but the storyline, the movie is really somewhat of a take on the prodigal son story. It's very prodigal son story. It's a very biblical movie. So I don't know how King Vidor presented it to this man for him to say, I'll let you make a movie about whores. But I just thought it was very ironic that around that time when the movies that were being made, that's the one that got called whorish, But anyway, so the film was shot on location in the South. So it was shot in Arkansas, Mississippi. I think there was one other location it might have been shot in, maybe a few others. So the cast not only endured racism from the crew, funny, right? Like the stars of the movie had to endure racism from the crew. Not to say that the crew were less than, but that's ironic, But so they not only kind of dealt with racism, and it was very subtle from the crew and everything, just more so things like people weren't talking to them, things like that. But they also endured racism from locals, people who had nothing to do with the movie. And if you check out the blog, you will see there was one particular incident that took place in Mississippi that the cast kind of laughed about after, according to Eva Jesse in publication she wrote, or an article she wrote in the Afro-American. They kind of laughed it off or whatever. But just think about it. You're stars in a movie and you go down to the South to film this movie, or go anywhere to film this movie, and then some random man is just like calling you the slurs and everything, giving you the works, giving you the good old Southern hospitality. So yeah, just go check out the blog and you will see, read about that story. But so even with all that they faced during the making of this movie, the cast was still very hopeful about future opportunities for themselves or for other black actors. This movie made a star out of Nina Mae McKinney. It's not Nina Mae, it's Nina Mae. So the movie made somewhat of a star. They brought her notoriety, but we all kind of know where her story went, because when you hear that name, is it very familiar to you? Probably not. Maybe so, more so not likely. So the actors or the performers who were especially excited and hopeful about this movie were Daniel L. Haynes, who plays the lead character, who plays the role of Zeke. He wrote an article in Afro-American about the movie as well. So, and it was also, some of these actors wrote articles and kind of touted the movie in response to the reviews about the negative portrayals or the stereotypical portrayals of African Americans. Did I say that? Stereotypical. I felt like that came out kind of weird. So Eva Jesse, famed choral director of the Dixie Jubilee Singers, who eventually became known as the Eva Jesse Choir. She was the choral director on the film as well as a cast member. And so both of these performers were especially vocal about what good the movie could bring for Black actors, including themselves. But, so again, I've said these two names, Daniel L. Haynes, Eva Jesse. They were so hopeful about the movie. They put so much into it. They talked about it as if it was the most promising. It was like a beacon of light. But when you hear those names, are they familiar to you? Did they ring a bell? Probably not. Maybe for a small percentage of you. Maybe for people who are very into music, it might have rung a bell. But for the most part, this movie was supposed to blaze trails. It was supposed to break ground, but the names of the actors aren't as big, or historians don't reference them often. Black historians probably, but generally speaking, even some Black historians or people who archive history or discuss history, they just aren't names that aren't brought up, like the Lena Hornes, the Paul Robesons, the Dorothy Dandridge, the Sidney Poitiers. These aren't names. Daniel L. Haynes and Eva Jesse and Fannie Belle McKnight or DeKnight aren't names that we hear all the time when speaking of Black history and sometimes even Black cinema history. So, right now, to end this episode, I am literally going to say the names of the actors in this movie. So let me flip over to IMDb and let's jump into it. So, I speak the names of Daniel L. Haynes, Nina Mae McKinney, William Fontaine, Harry Gray, Fannie Belle DeKnight, Everett McGarity, Victoria Spivey, Milton Dickerson, Robert Couch, Walter Tate, the Dixie Jubilee Singers, Matthew Stymie Beer, you guys probably know that name, Evelyn Pope Burwell, Eddie Connors, William Allen Garrison, Eva Jesse, Sam McDaniel, a familiar last name that you guys might know. He is Hattie McDaniel's brother. Clarence Muse, Madame Sotawan, someone I've discussed a lot in the past. Blue Washington, Georgia Woodruff. Now, these are the names that are on IMDb, but this movie had hundreds and hundreds of extras and performers. So please visit IMDb, look up these names, look up the movies they were in, if they were in more than one. Get to know them, get to learn who they are. I wanted to use this opportunity to actually say these names. Just to say them. Sometimes just simply saying someone's name is enough to kind of spark something in someone else, or to make someone want to research who they are and what they did. So look them up, read about them, go watch Hallelujah, and fellow Black creatives, let us remember them, along with others, but especially them, when we put pen to paper, finger to keys, when we put eyes to script as actors or whoever we are. Let's just remember the many forgotten names and faces that kind of blazed trails, laid foundation for us. Not just the names that we hear all the time, but the ones that were extras, so it was easy for them to be forgotten, and the ones that were actually stars of the movies they were in, and we've still forgotten them. So let's remember them in our heart, in our soul, and our spirit. Okay, so that's it. So thank you all for listening to the second episode of the Kindaris Pictures podcast. You can find Kindaris Pictures on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The website is kindarispictures.com. And the podcast is on anchor.fm, and it will soon be up on YouTube. Video will actually be up on YouTube very soon. Catch you guys in a couple of weeks. Love you so much. Bye.